Hey people, as you can see right there, go to me to www.suppressedhistories.net/articles2/dahia.htm. I came across an interesting article that I would like to use and share with y'all for entertainment and educational, mostly the latter purposes. And that's my disclaimer. Uh, This article is called Dahia El Kahina the Amizad Prophetess of Tunisia 640 to 703 CE, which is Common Era, by Max Dashu. It says Dahia or Dahia El Kahina was the daughter of an Amizad Berber chieftain in the Aurais Mountains on the border of modern Tunisia and Algeria. She is known by various names: Dahia, Daia, Daba, or Dahya, Tadmayat, the Beautiful Gazette. A 1377 account by Ibn Khaldun called her Dahia el Kahina, a title which means prophetess, sorceress in Arabic. But in Hebrew, it means prophet. It is prophetess, and is related to the Kohenet, the Hebrew word for prophetess. That's right. Describing over 600 years after her death, the Arab historian described Dahia as a tall woman with long hair. Other accounts describe her as a very dark black woman. She was very tall, and she was old too. She was like over 100 years old in battle with the Arabs. But over 600 years after her death, the Arab historian Ibn Khaldun described Dahia as a tall woman with long hair. She was the daughter of the Jawara chieftains, of a Jawara chieftain, and she was said to have ruled the tribe for 35 years from the capital Baghaya. Ibn Khaldun records her as being Jewish, though most modern sources, including the Jewish Encyclopedia, sees her as pagan, though some suggest that she was Christian because of Byzantine rulership of the region. That's what I was talking about earlier. The prophetess was a mature woman, a woman with two sons, and at the height of her power. When the Arab army of Hassan ibn al-Numan invaded and occupied Carthage in 695, she united the Amizigh over a vast territory of she united the Amizigh over vast territory to resist these Arabs. Now notice this is in 695, and 711 is not much later than that, which is during the time where Tariq had took back Spain and the north. He took back Spain from the north, but Tariq united with the Muslims. You know, he ended up uniting with the Muslims. I'll get off into that a little bit later, if this article doesn't go there. But notice the time frame of what happened here. This was in 695 when she united the Amizigh over vast territory. This article is 100. She became queen of Numidia, which the Arabs called Afrikia, the word origin of the word Africa. Dahia defeated his army decisively in several battles, forcing him to retreat back to Libya. Oh yeah, she was known as ferocious in these Muslim records. 3 years later, she returned with a bigger army. See, she used a scorched earth policy to beat them back, but this strategy turned many of the farmers against her. Dahia held the resistance for 4 years. Her army was overcome in 701, but she fled to the hills. Towards the end, she prophesied her own defeat and urged her son to escape to the other side so that they could survive. She later died in battle near Tabarka around 703 CE. Wow, Tabarka. That's a Hebrew word. You got to see the root word barka, like bless. So they was in the battle of Tabarka around 703 is when she died. The Amizigh resistance ended with her, at least for that time. So this is when they beat the Jews, when the Muslims beat the Israelites. And from this time, the Israelites still had dominance up under the Malian Empire and up under the Malian Empire, and when the Songhai Empire came, that's when it was all over for them. But it was during this period of Dahir el-Kahina when they began to flee to the south. All the Jews had left Spain, and they left Egypt, and they left the Middle East, and they left North Africa, and they all began to run to the sub-Saharan, subtropical coast and in central and south parts of Africa. Okay. But Sufi sororists played a part in modern Amazigh insurrections against foreign rule. One of them was Lala Fatima in Soromar of Algeria. This excerpt from Lala Fatima in Soromar, a symbol of famine, strength, tells a bit of her story. As we can see where that's at, that's www.algeria.com/blog/Lala Fatima. Lala Fatima in Soroma a symbol of feminine strength. Okay. The title Lala is given to women who are considered saints or of a high ranking, much like the title Sidi for men. From the start, Lala Fatima in Sodoma proved to be a force to be reckoned with, a girl with her own way of thinking, and in later years, a woman that was revered by others and became a legendary figure. Lala and Fatima in Sodoma became synonymous with the Kabyle resistance movement and was a key figure in the fight against the French invasion of Algiers. Source here, https:// www.algeria.com/forward/Layla-Fatima-in Sodoma-a symbol A of feminine strength. Same sources before. It is established that Fatima in Sodoma was born in July 1830 and did have siblings. Although the number is not determined, it is known that her father was a Quranic school director. She insisted on sitting in on her father's lessons and working on her education, which was very unusual for a girl to do at the time in line with her culture. A wedding was arranged for her, at the age of 16 when she refused, rather, adopting a solitary life and continuing her religious studies. She was a marriage resistor. Okay, she was a marriage resistor. It was not long before people heard that in Samoa could look into her own future, and many came from far and wide with gifts and asking for her advice. That most people noticed first is how well she looked, how well she took care of herself, and for striking features. The French began to move into Algerian territory in 1830. Lala Fatima Nsorma was able to inspire men through her speeches and was present at many battles. Tragically, Balbagla was killed in 1854, and the resistance remained without a leader until 1855, when it was decided to hand leadership over to Fatima Nsorma with the assistance of her brothers. The resistance was to be overwhelmed in 1857, outnumbered by the French army. Wow. This is the Europeans, they coming in to they doing their thing. They really shutting down shop. This is, they knew what we were, and they heard about the stories of what was going on. Many, including Lala Fatima and Sodoma, were forced to go into hiding, although she was the last to surrender. Stories on how her capture came about are based on speculation, but she was found, arrested, and taken prisoner by the French. The daughter of Lala, Fatima Nsorma, a feminist organization, was named after her, and her fearlessness, independence, and bravery is still alive in songs and depictions in the country. In 1995, her remains were removed and buried in Algiers, not Algeria, Algiers. The Heroes Cemetery. And I wanted to state in here, back up when she's talking about how she, she told her son pretty much to surrender to the Muslims and join the Muslims to take back Spain, and it was through her that the Israelites began to first convert to Islam. Okay, it was up under her that she didn't convert. She was Israelite to the end, but her son converted and became Muslim and joined with the Muslims, and Tariq took back Spain in 711. Tariq was the son of this Dahir el-Kahina. You see? But, so when Dahir el-Kahina passed on, okay, when she passed away, you see, we got this community in the Sudan. Well, you see right here, this is the Sudan that I'm talking about, Western Sudan. As you see, when you look up Sudan, as I was telling you earlier, Sudan is in another part. Today's Sudan is in the west, in the east. But the Sudan I'm talking about was a Jewish community in the west. And it was through these Arabs in this relationship with these Christians and these wars that was instigated between these African communities and these Muslims and these Christians, you know, for the scramble of Africa. This is where the scramble of Africa first started to take place. You notice that the Queen Dahir El Kahina, she was called Melkut El Afriqiya. She was called in Arabic the Queen of Africa. Okay? And this was one of the first references to the people of Northern Africa. Not all of Africa was called Africa. It was the north part of Africa and the Israelite territories and the Berbers. All of these people were darker than the black people. Okay? And it was during the 7th century, around 711, you know, that when the Muslims began to take over the northern territories, that they were forced and converted into Islam. And as they converted into Islam, they became the Moorish Empire. And the Moorish Empire began to flood into Spain, and they took back Spain and set up the Almoravid and the Almohade dynasties. Okay? These were Jewish, Phoenician, and Egyptian converts to Islam that started the Moorish Empire. Okay? So, as you can see here, talk about here how they fled to West Africa. They migrated to West Africa. And you say various historical records states that at one time they were present in Ghana, Mali, and the Songhai empires. Yeah, they were. Which was then called the Bilad el Sudan. Remember I told you Ghana, the Ghana Empire, the Mali Empire, the Songhai Empire. The Israelites were instrumental in that because the Israelites founded the Ghanaian Empire, and this is talked about in the Tariq el-Fatush and the Tariq Tariq el-Fatush, and it's another Muslim writing. I can't think of it right off the top of my head. But here you talk about the many early different Jewish establishments that were known throughout history to have settled in the northern part of Africa. Remember I was telling you all about Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco. Just go back to the old New Testament days. Remember Cyrene the Cyrene, or Simon the Nigger, the Niger. He was one of these Jews who lived in the Jewish settlements along the upper Nile and in the islands of the Elephantine in Egypt. You know, he goes way, way back. You see right here talk about the Jews. It really dominated the northern part of Africa and Spain real heavily after the Second Temple, the destruction of the Second Temple. Right here where it says 30,000 and the collapse of the Second Temple in 70 A.D. I'm sorry, where they say 30,000 Jewish slaves were settled throughout Carthage by the Roman Emperor Titus here. These are the records what I'm talking about right here. The Tariq el-Sudan and the Tariq el-Fatush. The Tariq el-Sudan. It talks about all of these stories that I'm telling you about how Ghana was started by Jewish kings called the Za kings. You see right there, Za el-Iman. Okay, Africa identified in various Jewish sources in connection with Tarshish. Remember I was telling you, and Ophir. Okay, which one of these Jewish sources? They talking about Flavius Josephus? No, we talking about Timid 32b and the parallel passage where African land is evidently the same as Carthage. Okay. So the Septuagint and Jerome, who was taught by Jews. Okay, Africa is identified in various Jewish sources in connection with Tarshish and Ophir. Well, I know the Ophir comes from where it comes from Flavius Josephus, where it said Africa was named after the sons of Abraham. He had in Keturah, and they had a son named Ophir. This is you get the Banu offerings and things of that nature, who have oral tradition of being Jewish. The Septuagint and Jerome, who was taught by Jews and very often the Aramaic Targum on the prophets, identified the biblical Tarshish with Carthage. Wow. Did we know that? It said the Septuagint and Jerome, Isaiah 23:1. Isaiah 23:1. Wow. So the Septuagint, when the Septuagint was speaking of Isaiah 23:1, which is a much older record, and Jerome, and what was Jerome's sources? Jerome speak about Ezekiel 25:7. So these were the older sources. They were saying, wow, they were saying that Tarshish, these people identified Tarshish with Carthage, which was the birthplace of a number of rabbis, which was so. Some of the greatest rabbis in the world came from North Africa, and this is why they got to stop lying about African Jews and African Jewry and African Hebrewism, because they both was there, okay? Who were mentioned in the Talmud, yes. Okay, I don't read Talmud like that. I need to look into it, but I'm familiar with that. Africa, in the broader sense, is clearly I indicated where mention is made of the 10 tribes. Wow. Africa, in a broader sense, is clearly indicated where mention is made of the 10 tribes, who were driven into exile by the Assyrians and journeyed in Africa. Connected with this is the idea that the river Sambaton is in Africa. The Arabs, who also knew the legend of the Beni Musa, sons of Moses, agree with the Jews in placing their land in Africa. Let's be nosy and push what the Beni Musa is. The Banu Musa brothers, sons of Moses, namely Abu Jafar ibn Muhammad ibn Musa ibn Shakir, okay, Ibn al-Qassam ibn Ahmed ibn Musa ibn Shakir, and al-Hassan ibn Musa ibn Shakir were 3 9th century Persian scholars who lived in Baghdad. Let's be nosy here. See what we can get here. The Banu Musa worked in astronomical observations established in Baghdad by the Abbasid caliphs. This isn't telling us what we want to know. I know how to find out what we want to know. We want to know about the Banu Musa, the Beni Musa. Because there were stories of the Beni Musa, the sons of Moses, living in Africa. And I've read that before, but I'll get off into that a little later too, just like I did with the just like I did with the Tariq and the here El Kahina connection. And you can find this in Yosef Ben Yakanan's writings. You know, I have the book up here. It's in the book because it's in the book. Yeah, Joseph Ben Yakanan talked about this in the book called From the Nile Valley to the New World Science, Invention and Technology, New Dimensions in African History. And these were the London lectures of Dr. Joseph Ben Yakanan and Dr. John Henry Clark, edited with introduction by Dr. John Henry Clark. And as what it talk about here, it talk about many Jews here as early as the Roman times. You know, this here is some of the records where they talk about the Arab accounts. They talk about the Beni Musa legends. And this is in the Tariq es-Sudan. In the Tariq es-Sudan talk about the Za kings of Zawa Ali, man, with the Zael Yemeni coming from Yemen and settling in the Kakia, you know, which is in northern Africa, in the in what's called Ghana today. I mean, not Ghana today, but in what's called the ancient Bilad el Sudan. You know, not the Ghana of today. All of that is what you see today is not the land of the ancient. You know, it's the territories and boundaries set today has much to do with Europeans. After Europeans have scrambled up Africa already. But much of our enslavement had a lot to do with us being the descendants of the children of Israel. You know, if you can go back and just check out these stories and stuff, you know, where it talk about across the Atlas Mountains, the legendary Queen Kahina led an army of 7th century Berbers, Jews, and other North African ethnic groups. Remember I was telling you about the Canaanites, the Philistines, the Egyptians, you know, groups in battle against encroaching Islamic warriors. In the 10th century, as the socio-political environment in Baghdad became increasingly hostile to Jews, this is the story right here. In the 10th century, this is when so this more so happened. Like I said, it started in the 7th century, but in the hostility became in the 10th century, where it talk about the environment in Baghdad became real hostile to the Jews, where many Jewish traders who lived and worked there moved to the Maghreb, particularly to Tunisia. Over the following 2 to 3 centuries, a distinctive group of traders who were active throughout the Mediterranean world became known as the Maghribi, passing this term of identification on from father to son. According to certain local Malian legends, an account, remember the Mali Empire, the Empire of Mali, an account of the Tariq in the Tariq el-Sudan may have recorded the first Jewish presence in West Africa, which coincided with the arrival of the first Zawa king of Kaukia and his brother, who settled near the Niger River. He was only known as Zawa el-Yemen, which means that he comes from Yemen, or Zael Yemen. That's what it, Zawa el Yemen. Some local legends state that you can find them as Zael Yemeni, Zael Yemeni too. That's how you call them in Hebrew. This one here, some local legends state that Zawa al-Yaman was a member of one of the Jewish communities which were either transported or voluntarily moved from Yemen by the Ethiopians in the 6th century after the defeat of Dunawes. Now this is read in from this is talked about it from Babylon and Timbuktu, and he got it from the Tariq al-Sudan. Okay, the Tariq al-Sudan tells this story. This is older records. Okay, the Tariq al-Sudan states that there were 14 Zawa rulers of Kikiya after Zawa al-Yaman. Before the rise of Islam in the region, there is debate on whether or not the Tariq al-Sudan can be understood in this manner. It's understood in that manner because it coincides with the history. Any other idea is shoehorning. Okay, it fits perfectly. But yeah, so you got all of these Muslim records. Here's your the different kings of the the Beni Israel. You got the manuscript C of the Tariq al-Fatash describe a community called the Beni Israel that in the 14th century CE existed in Tanmurna, possessed 333 wells, and had 7 leaders. Wow, Jabruk bin Hasim, Toel Yaman bin Abdel Hakim, Ziyor bin Salam, Abdel Latif bin Suleiman, now I'm looking at this, when they talk about the Suleiman, is that Arabic for Solomon, or is that a Jewish name for the Aliman? The Sal, okay, the Amon, yeah, Amon, because the C was the name of for the Za. They became the Za kings or the Sea kings. Okay. Malik bin Ayub, which is king, son of Job, and Fidel bin Masur. You can still see that Arabic influence in there. There was an Arabic Phoenician Jewish type language that flourished throughout that area. It was also stated that they had an army of 1,500 men. Okay, in the 14th century, many Moors and Jews who were fleeing persecution in Spain migrated south to the Timbuktu area. Remember I told you they, after Askia Muhammad became king, and here it goes, it's going to tell you the whole story. Okay, in the 14th century, many Moors and Jews who were fleeing persecution in Spain migrated south to the Timbuktu area, which was part of the Songhai Empire at the time. Because Sunni Ali was the first Songhai king. Then his son became king, and Askia Muhammad usurped the kingdom from him. Amongst them was the Kahat family, or the Kati family, which was descended from Ishmael Jankat al-Yahudi of Scaida, Morocco. Wow. The sons of this prominent family founded 3 villages which still exist near Timbuktu: the Kashambo, the Heibomo, and the Kangawgara. In 1492, Oscar Muhammad I came to power in the previously tolerant region of Timbuktu and declared that Muslims must convert to Islam or leave. Oscar Muhammad came to power in the previously tolerant region of Timbuktu and agreed that Jews must convert to Islam or leave. Judaism became illegal in Mali in 1492, as it did in the Catholic Spain the same year. Remember, I told y'all that earlier. This was based on evidence of Muhammad al-Maghili, who hated the Jews and had stirred up many insurrections of the Jews prior to 1492. As the historian Leo Africanus wrote in 1526, in Gaurura, there were some very rich Jews. The intervention of the preacher Muhammad al-Moghili of Tlemcen set up the pillage of their goods, and most of them have been killed by the population. Wow. This even took place during the same year when the Jews had been expelled from Spain and Sicily by the Catholic king. Leo Africanus further wrote, the king Oscar is declared enemy of the Jews. He will not allow any to live in the city. If he hear it said that a Berber merchant frequent them or does business with them, he confiscates his goods. And you got the Jews of the Sahara, and they talk about here how it is believed that some Berber clans may have been at one time Jews, and according to other traditions that they may have been Philistines driven up out of Canaan. The Philistines were Egyptians. Remember how, Egyptians dominated the land of Canaan. It was the Canaans that was the garrisons of the land for the Philistines. This is a part of the history that people don't tell you. There is a tradition that Moses was buried in Templin. And the presence of a large number of Jews in that part of Africa is attested to that only by the many sacred places and shrines bearing biblical names, which are holy to Muslims and Jews as well, but also by the presence of large number of Jewish sagas. Ren says certain Berber tribes were for a long time of the Jewish religion, especially the Amish. And today, even to see amongst the Haninsha and the Sokoras in Algeria, a semi-nomad tribe of Israelite devoted entirely to agriculture. In addition, it may be noticed that the Jews are to be found in the Berber skurs, fortified villages, and also southern Morocco and in the adjacent Sahara. Thus, an outlet near Tefalot, there is a Malat with about 500 Jews, and at Fitguig, a Milah of about 100 Jews. Going further south to Duat, there is a large community of Jews on the oasis of Al-Hamada. And at Temented, a 2 weeks journey from Tafilot, and the 6,000 or 800 inhabitants are said to be the descendants of Jews converted to Islam. Even further to the west in the province of Sus, there is Al Ghulman with 3,000 inhabitants, of whom 100 are said to be Jews. This stuff can go on and on, but I'm not going to read anymore. But that's that. And that is just how the story goes, you know. You could just, and it has all of the resources, so you can check it out.